Call the meeting to order at 6:02.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you so much. So I know you haven't received the updated document, but at the last council meeting, you had a copy of the budget. Has anyone had a chance to look at the numbers at least, or have any questions from that last meeting?
I went through it all before the last meeting, and I didn't have any major questions.
Okay.
I figured something was like outstanding, you would bring it up, but I didn't see anything that surprised me from discussions we've had in the group, so.
Okay. Paula, David?
No.
Okay. So I will share.
Has there been big changes to the document since the one we saw at that meeting? I mean, other than formatting?
So there have been a couple of changes. One is I added the Loop Road Waterline project
Okay,
to the document, and so that will come out of the water fund reserves. It's $162,000. Our initial budget for it for this year was $100,000. So inflation.
162 does not surprise me at all.
right, and I'm going, oh my gosh, how did we get there?
Right,
Like,
right. So that isn't too terrible. And then I moved some money around within the street fund. So there will probably be some there will be reallocation of the distribution for the new staff member for office staff. And that's helping both public works and planning with permitting, record management processes in general. And so the salary for that was reduced in the street department. And I took the $25,000 basically and put it in under engineering for determining the cost for some of the road improvements that we were looking at in our TIP. And so we're still nailing out the statement of work for that. And so I don't know how far that will go,
right?
But that's what's in there for now. I think those were the two. Oh, and then I rolled over the purchase of a vehicle for the equipment reserve fund. And we're going to see the costs won't come out until Friday. So you don't know how much it's going to cost yet for a 2023 vehicle. Ideally, we would get two. And we've raised the rates for the vehicle or for the equipment services fund, but we're also down an employee. And so those cost allocations, it's hard to estimate how much revenue we're bringing in on that. But
And how many ish miles a day does one of these vehicles typically drive?
it's typically not miles, it's hours on the engine.
Yeah, it just occurs to me it might be time to look into electric.
Mhm.
There are a lot of electric trucks out there that are Ford F-150 and stuff.
Mhm.
Might save a lot of money more.
There's actually a state law for public agencies. I don't know if it was delayed or not to where you have to go to alternative fuels.
I mean, if they're under, most of them go 300 miles
Mhm.
between charges.
Mhm.
Should be fine.
We looked into it. My last position, so we did a lot of construction management, and it's not the miles so much as the four-wheel drive capabilities. Can they plow? Can they pull?
It's the power.
Can they tow?
That's
Yeah.
the key.
So, yeah, it's just a little
Well,
bit
the
of a
cool thing is a lot of them have inverters built into them, so you can plug power tools right into the truck.
right.
You can generators.
And that's totally sick. Yeah, I should actually reach out to my old boss because they were gonna try a couple this summer, see how they were.
Cool.
Oh, yeah.
But they didn't have to tow. They were more like four-wheel drive, gravel roads, snow, like just.
Yep. The four-wheel drive snow is not an issue. The towing can be.
Yeah.
They can tow just fine, but just not for very long.
Mhm.
Right.
No,
That would be.
just like gas, your energy efficiency tanks as soon as you start hauling anything
Yeah.
behind it.
Well, and I think for our area, I would be more comfortable with a hybrid over a straight electric.
Mhm.
Because of the rural nature of where we live. And sometimes you have to go far.
Yeah.
Mhm. But again, we can look at it, and I do know that they're making strides.
They're,
Oh,
yeah,
Regular
they're,
basis.
they're
Yeah.
advancing faster.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Worth looking at, but.
Mhm.
How we doing? And again, I don't know if it's a budget meeting, but I guess, how we doing on filling the vacant position?
So, applications are due on the 2nd.
Okay. so we still have
yeah,
till tomorrow,
yeah.
I guess.
Mhm. Yep.
Okay, hello, sir.
How's it going?
And we're working on, conducting interviews as soon as possible.
Right.
And that person is budgeted in here, sort of mid-range.
Right.
Mhm.
Paul already used your.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Appreciate that. Gavel. Gavel me this.
So those are really just the two big changes.
Right.
So again, I'll work on improving the presentation for this. But it's getting
This is
better.
the new
It's
software.
the new software.
Back.
Fix the glitches sometime this afternoon, and then I was again continuing to work with it. So here's just kind of a general overview on what the budget is and what it does. In essence, it gives us the legal right to spend money and limits the amount that we can spend to enact the priorities and what we're legally required to do by state law or city code. So there we go. So proposed revenues. They are pretty much conservative revenue estimations, population, minor increase in population growth, and 1% increase in the property levy tax plus new construction, conservative sales tax, proposing a 5% increase to water utilities based on the current ordinance that we have, and a 15% increase to wastewater utilities for 2023. Both of those are going to be looked at as well as part of the rate study that we have going on. So
We signed the contract already.
we signed that contract
We
last
did
meeting,
last
yeah. I haven't scheduled a kickoff meeting at all yet with them.
So if something happened in the rate study where they said, adjust those, would we adjust them as part of the 23 budget, or would their recommendations wait until 24?
Yeah, I was gonna say when.
So
when they
I
complete it.
I would hold off on the recommendations for the base rates until 2024. The system development charges I would implement as soon as comfortable. Because the rate restructuring is looking at both the system development charges and the base rates, as well as usage rates.
Is there anything pending in regards to wastewater that might change that 15% for 2023? I think there was other funding.
No, because even if we get the 2.5 million, it still needs to go 15%.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and reason being is the cost for the project are already about $3 million over.
Yeah.
So. And then right now I have in there grants and loans that we have secured. I do not have the $2.5 million in there because I don't know. I have to apply for it towards the end of this year. And one thing that we learned when we went to IACC was that in order to apply for some loans, you need to make sure that you don't have any findings, no matter what the finding is. And so even though the finding was on, that we had was on, in essence, our advertisement for the RFQ, we need to have that cleared. In order to clear that, you have to have an audit luckily the auditors are able to fit us in mid-November.
So you
So,
have to have no findings, no matter what they are. Can't have findings.
right,
Wow.
right.
Okay.
So, again, just to make sure that we're in the clear for any grants or loans that we want to apply for. And we typically have an audit on an annual basis. And they weren't, because of everyone getting all of these government, all of the funding that they've been receiving, there's a lot more single audits that have to take place. And they just didn't have the staff to accommodate that, but they've had an opening. So and it's only going to be a financial audit. They'll do the accountability audit, a financial audit, and a single audit next year as well, but not until the fall. So that's, but all of the funds that we have current contracts for are included in this budget. Anything that comes up that we've applied for will then be included in the budget then. And then here's just kind of a summary of what some of the revenue sources are. And if you're looking at this online, it goes with this chart.
Nice.
So again, we have a lot of other financing sources. Those are related to the loans and grants that we have for the wastewater treatment plant. And then we have also a large amount of interfund transfers. So there's $400,000 budgeted from the water sewer fund to the wastewater system improvement fund. And then there's also $150,000 from the general fund to the street fund to cover that cost for that deficiency. Are there any questions on, and I can run more information on any of these if you have any questions, and I can have it prepared at the next.
60% of the budget is just other, just this big bucket that goes.
And so I can,
Lemonade stands.
right, right.
Mostly lemonade stands.
Use magazine.
Couch cushions.
And I actually, I was able to do it for the expenses.
Actually,
How
it
is-
was, but it was lemonade stand. No.
Right, right.
Um,
How is an interfund transfer considered a revenue source? It's just taking it from one pocket and putting it to the other.
It's a revenue for the street fund,
So this is all.
and it's a revenue for the wastewater system improvement fund, upgrades fund.
So it's incoming cash that didn't come from fees.
Right, right. It's a showing.
Mhm.
It's a legal showing, but showing nonetheless.
right, it's just moving one bucket to another, but it still shows up as
Right.
income for that particular section of
Correct.
what we do.
Plus instead of
We'd
minus.
also see it on the expense side.
Yes, you will see it on the expense side
Okay.
as well. Yeah. Mhm. And so proposed expenses, highlight of just some high ticket items that we have that aren't regularly recurring. Painting City Hall, the outside as well as the inside. I just estimate $50,000. Still not 100% sure.
Are you guys deeply attached to the Purple Doors?
No. I think that was a Mary Ann thing.
I would have guessed it was a Candace thing.
Candice.
I bet you're right.
Yeah.
I bet you're right.
She has a floor that is
So-
very purple.
Her whole house is bright.
I think we needed to mention that plaque.
From 2014.
That was why we did it.
So, just upkeep that needs to be done, to make sure that our walls stay in place. So speaking of walls, install office walls at City Hall, so that would be interior walls. And it hasn't been determined whether they'll be cube walls, so cubicles, or actual constructed walls yet. We haven't decided on the layout, and then a budget will flow from that. And then also, office desks as well to fit in to new spaces to be
Is
more
there-
compact.
Plan for the basement too.
$10,000 does not include the basement.
Long term, we moved the
Right.
chambers downstairs,
Right,
so we don't have to worry about this.
right. So long-term, there is something for downstairs. I can work on planning for that, in next year's budget. And we can work on getting everything together and then putting it for 2024. It's been really popular as an incubator space. So,
But there's that whole records room. that could be-
right. So the other thing, the other side of that too is, we got the Laserfiche and we're hoping to get that up and running, more so this winter time. And it'll be going through records and determining what's a long-term record to scan and store and what is not. And so that will help pare down the records that we have. We also want to move the records up here.
You guys have done it?
At least more of the regular ones that we have. So we've moved building permits up here and then planning records will also be coming up here. The ones that we kind of need to get out on a more regular basis.
Fair sized kitchen down there, a couple bathrooms and it's been mothballed for a while, but the records room is pretty big.
A lot of unused space.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have an antique piece of machinery.
The old
Um,
laboratory is down there.
Yeah, our old SCADA system. That we were,
It's probably fixed that wall.
yeah, it's
So I
huge,
had a lost in space.
that we no longer need. Right? We're trying to give it to the interpretive center, but
You know,
right. Although there is matching infrastructure at the water treatment plant still.
So that's not on here.
Well, I just threw painting on there. I don't have a budget for the rest of it.
some murals.
Yeah. So for the street fund, we have the engineering standards update that's rolling. From this year, we're not going to be able to get it done. We do have a meeting next week to work on a scope of work for getting that project done. And so basically those costs are rolling over to next year, as well as I discussed, the $25,000 for preliminary engineering for the TIP projects. Again, we're still narrowing down that scope of work to see how far that would go. And then replacing Loop Road water line, $162,000. So 100,000 of that is rolled from this year, and then $62,000 is kind of the inflationary costs from that project. And then painting the water treatment plant, the inside of that is $100,000. And that will have to be contracted out.
Speaking of water treatment, water system, the reservoir tower thing right there by Brian Adams' house. It looks pretty decrepit paint wise. I don't know if the others in town look as bad. Is that something
Which
that's?
one's Brian Adams?
By the old
Catholic
Catholic
Church?
church.
Oh,
Up
yeah.
behind there.
Just an evaluation on that one done. That's funny because I just actually written that down on my notes. Is I haven't gotten any notes from them yet, but yeah.
We just had
Fair things
divers in
about
there.
it.
That's when you had that bag
So-
of goodness, right?
There will need to be some updates to that plan as well, but we don't have any estimates.
for the challenge.
Yeah. And then again, replacing service truck. And that was in essence rolled from this year because when we went to go buy one, we missed the window. They didn't have any, so we'll get costs. They come out on Friday and we'll figure out how many we can purchase.
So on the 17th, or what is this next meeting?
The 17th, yeah,
The 17th, we'll be able to look at that again and go,
right, ideally.
maybe, at least definitely, yeah.
Yes, yes. And then again, a large portion of the budget, when you look at the total budget, we have the phase 2 wastewater collection system upgrades, which is about $2.7 million remaining in that. And then the wastewater treatment plant upgrades, which is about $11 million ish. And then,
Phase 2 of the pump stations, yeah.
yeah. And then in addition to the wastewater treatment plant, part of the reason why there's a $400,000 interfund transfer for that is because as they do things at the treatment plant, other things fail that are part of our maintenance for the plant. And so that $400,000 is covering those costs. And so we will have a change order for some pumps included in that, basically, which would just be maintenance. They're not part of upgrades. So kind of like separating out the buckets, but it will still be all part of that fund because I'm trying to keep all of that together. And then personnel, sort of as discussed at the last meeting, cost of living adjustment of 5%, which is less than the June 2022 CPI of 8%. And then plus salary adjustments for all the positions, and they range from 2 to 13%, depending on the position. And that's based on industry averages, as well as, and then there's step increases for all employees that aren't already topped out. One other thing that I was talking to staff about is because the CPI, because the COLA is less than the CPI of when we adopt the resolution, also adopting a 5% increase for 2024 as well. So that is something that will be proposed so that they know, again, trying to keep up and not get too far behind with those, but also trying to manage it through our budgets. It will also be looked at next year to see sort of where that CPI falls and how it is in comparison as well. And then the cost of medical insurance is only going up 4.5%, and then no increase to dental or vision plans.
It's actually really good.
Right? Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I've been doing benefits administration for a while, and that's,
Our liability insurance is a different story, but
right. But I'm
For
just
health-
saying, that is
Yeah.
pretty impressive.
Yep. And then services, sort of the breakdown for services. So as you can see, again, 68% is kind of like other. So I did, and so again, the transfers out, a large portion of that is that $400,000. And then salaries, in comparison to the other two, is only 5%, and then benefits is roughly half that. And then supplies isn't very much either. Just kind of goes down. And so services, this is kind of the breakdown of how it shakes out. So services, a lot of it goes to sewer. We have $120,000 annually for sewer line inspection and slip lining, so inspection and repairs. And then also another 120,000 is for the hauling of solids and treatment of our biosolids. And then engineering costs are also in there. Water utilities, cultural and community activities, those are all of our TAC funded grants. So this tourism, law enforcement. I have a 3% increase in the budget right now. There's going to be a 0% extension for the first 6 months. And then I don't know what the last 6 months are going to be, but there's 3% in there just as an.
When the new
So the
sheriff
cultural,
get his or her
Yes, yeah.
set and then figure it out.
cultural and community activities, so that's $400,000 that we pay for the cultural and community activities that are put on within the city. Is that
Yeah, so those are the grants that we give out for events to be put on, or for
There's
the chamber.
incoming money to pay for
that's
that,
part of that?
Yeah.
part of the hotel motel tax.
Yeah.
Creates that fund.
This isn't just like straight out, like there's things that come in for these different things. This is just the out.
Yeah.
Portion of it.
Yep,
That's
exactly.
helpful. I'm like, can we spend the same amount on that if we do water? Like,
Hold on a second.
More than for
Right.
public safety?
Right,
Right?
right, yeah. So, so that's kind of the breakdown of the other, amount.
So
Why do we have streets, admin overhead different, like as a different line item than maintenance, just out of curiosity? Sewer and water are all.
I don't see the back end. But admin and overhead is just the management, and maintenance is the actual physical maintenance of the road. So that would be crews going out and chip sealing.
Right, but like sewer and water don't appear to be broken out. Admin
When I
people.
did the check boxes,
Oh,
I narrowed those down. So I can see about narrowing down the streets as well.
just out of
So,
curiosity.
yeah.
That's how that matters.
Yeah, and so this is in essence, just kind of like the initial letter, and then we'll go into the budget overview, just kidding. Um, We'll go into the fund summaries. And so we can start looking at all of the funds. So again, we're spending a little bit more than we're bringing in, by almost $1 million. But that is, like I said, a large part due to the wastewater treatment plant project and other capital projects that are going on. If those were ongoing revenues, I'd be more concerned. But they're one time, and so they're just in essence spending down your reserves. And as you can see, the wastewater system
Right.
is the main user of all of the revenues, because of the grants and loans that we're receiving. And then here is sort of the breakdown. We're getting about $900,000 in taxes. And so the taxes, that's both your property tax and your sales tax for the general fund, which is sort of the main driver. And then charges for goods and services. That would be the administrative overhead charged from the general fund. So I allocate out the legislative costs, I allocate out finance costs, and I allocate out executive costs and HR costs. So that's what comes back to the general fund. And then street fund, again, here's your interfund transfer of $150,000. Taxes are only $368,000. $308,000 is your sales tax. Your vehicle tax and other taxes, actually, so your vehicle taxes come out of that. Your gas tax is that $43,000, and that's distributed on a per capita basis. So when our population dropped, we lost some funds. Your tourism fund projected to get $473,000 in sales tax next year. Let's see, the affordable housing taxes, I believe that will just be what we will get every year. So if our sales tax collections go up, it's capped at that $5,100. And that's a 20-year limit for that revenue. So at the end of 20 years,
That's a
it
percentage of sales tax, right? Or
it's a sales tax credit. So yes, it's I think like 0.73% of the sales tax is
so
what
it
we
just
get back
keeps
to the credit.
going into a fund and it just keeps growing.
Yes, because we don't have anything that we can spend it on, and I don't know what we could bond for
I just-
$5,000 a
I'm
year.
wondering, Chris, like,
Yes.
what we're gonna do with $5,100 every year to
Right.
address affordable housing. $5,100 is.
So the other thing.
Is right.
So another option is we could try a levy or a sales tax again when we get a better plan in place for what we want to do with that money. And that could also go into that fund.
Well, I just try to just weigh the effort to, any kind of returns on that at $5,000 a year, that's laughable. And what are we supposed to do with that?
You can
Maybe hire a consultant for a week.
give it to someone to pay rent, but even that 5,000 for a year.
3 months.
I mean, yeah,
Right.
yeah,
And rent.
yep. Capital Improvement Fund. So in here, this is 2021 to year to date, which was through last week. So as we get more property tax sales or real estate sales, so get more.
Sorry to interject. Are these numbers, do you pair these up? Like, are these, do you pair them up to your
I
But
gave
it's
them
stuff-
these numbers.
Oh, so you have to pull from one and put it, they're
Yeah.
not connected.
Yeah, no, I know. Yes, it would be.
So the 55,185 was 2021, and then the 20 was what was budgeted in 22, and then the
Yes.
51 is what's actual 22. So we're budgeting again 20, but we'll probably see in the 55 range again. Because that's what we've done the last 2
Well,
years.
I don't know because there's a couple things driving that.
Okay,
One is our subdivisions are maxed out.
oh, okay.
And so building's gonna slow, and so that also may slow
Sure
real
is.
estate, and then, the, what is it, mortgage rates,
Have gone,
Interest
yes.
rates.
interest rates, yeah, so. I'm
Okay, no, I
conservatively,
I appreciate
Yeah.
the conservative estimate. I was
Yeah.
just curious because I'm like, I see a pattern.
right,
It
right,
Seems like we've been trending up rather than, yeah, okay,
Mhm.
but you're right, the market could not sustain that again necessarily.
Mhm.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
It's just a question,
I mean, that's not to say that people aren't just paying cash, but,
right?
so. Russell Avenue, that's, going away. First Street, this is just waiting to see if we get, a grant. And so if we don't get the grant that we applied for through the state, we'll reapply again for the federal grant that we paid for the original design for. Columbia Avenue project, this is just rolling over what hasn't been used or wasn't anticipated to be used from this year, and that project is closes in June. So again, $2 million in revenues for basically your water sewer rates is what that's bringing in, and that's split between water and sewer because it's a combined fund, and it's not 50-50 split. And then again, we have to do an annual transfer to the short-lived asset fund that can be used on assets that are have a life. I think it's less than 5 years or less than 10 years. And so that fund's just building up until we want to use it. And then again, here's the bulk of the revenue for the wastewater system upgrades funds. And then and then your equipment services fund. Again, I bumped up the estimated revenue because right now we're already above what I projected for this year. So just estimating 115 instead of 25. So again, and then these are just the sources of revenue. So again, those other financing sources are your grants and loans, charges for goods and services, intergovernmental revenues. Those are also grants, like Department of Ecology and others. So then this is what it kind of looks like. You can definitely see that large impact for those loans that we're getting. And then here's just sort of the expenses by fund. Again, your wastewater system upgrade fund. And there's the table that shows where the expenses are going. So the other one was revenues, and these are expenses. And as anticipated, the upgrades are the driver for a lot of those costs. The other fund, again, is just your water sewer fund. It's defined as a major fund. So the city has two major funds, and a major fund is where 10% of your budgeted revenues and or expenses come from that fund. And so we have our water sewer fund and then our general fund are those two. And as you can see, your water sewer fund and then your general fund. And then the rest are just kind of more or less minor in comparison to those two. And again, this just kind of goes over in each fund where the costs are coming from, or sorry, where the costs are going.
Can you go back to the wastewater that the expenditures by waste? I just wanted to just get
This one of the chart or the pie chart, see?
that one. Okay, now I get it. Money in, money out. We'll make that happen. And then that'll come back down once the plant project is done. But I just wanted to get a feel for how much money was not spent. over the last several years. I don't see any expenditures on the.
So
plan.
one thing, and that might be better for this one. Capital expenditures. So this is like how your money is spent. So is it on salaries, is it on services, is it on capital expenses? And so this one is where, yeah, you kind of have like your capital expenditures at the very bottom there. And that's kind of where it shows just overall. I have this also in the water sewer fund. I don't have it for, because the upgrades are in a separate fund, I can roll it all together. I don't have it put all together just yet. So, but this is sort of, again, where in each department, everything's spent for department. And this is in your packet as well. So if you wanted to, if it's after I make some updates and everything, this will be published on the city website as a link. The goal is to have that done by the next council meeting so the public can view it in this easier manner versus through the PDF. So this, yeah. And
We can view it this way, not on the packet.
when I make the link live, yes, yeah. And so it's just a lot easier to jump from places. So, so let's see.
I'm trying to follow along in the PDF and I'm not being successful. So
Oh, yeah, I don't.
Yeah.
Fine, no, it's so intimidating.
200 pages.
Yeah. The budget
Actually,
book
it's only
portion.
193. So much better.
Right. I think the budget book was 155 of that. Yeah. So this is the summary of the water sewer fund that we were just looking at. Again, as you see, we're doing a lot of capital projects. And so the expenses are exceeding revenues. And so this just kind of
That's
revenues
straight.
by source.
Straight
There you go.
revenue, right? Like that's standard income on any of those funds. It's not, doesn't take into account grants and loans, or is that?
I took out the beginning and ending fund balances because that skews things. Because it is included in the budget, but is not included in the actuals. But then also when you're looking at the bar charts to compare them, it would be equal for the budgets. So
Because when you say you spend it more out than in, people go, wait, but
We're.
Yeah.
Right. We're
So in
paying
the-
into reserves.
yeah, so in the water sewer fund, we are spending down our reserves is what it comes out to be.
Well, you have reserves, so you can do capital improvements.
Exactly. And I mentioned earlier, if it were operating expenses, that would be a different story.
Bigger fund.
Yeah. And so again, most of the costs for operations, so our operations coming out of our water sewer fund are mostly sewer. It's just higher utility to run. There's that $400,000 interfund transfer. And then the capital expenditure is the water projects for about $262,000. And then the debt service. So I'm still working on the debt service chart, and that will just continue to grow bigger and bigger as we work on closing out this project. Because right now, I believe the projected payback, principal and interest for the Department of Ecology loan is over $400,000. To pay back the big loan that we're taking for the wastewater treatment plant project. And so again, this is just kind of year over year, cost for capital expenditures. And these are various projects that have been going on in the water sewer fund. And so some of the expenses, again, though rate restructure study for both water and sewer, engineering standards update, which is rolled from 2022, the Loop Road water line and the water treatment plant painting, and then the transfer to the upgrades fund, again, for the maintenance items that are coming up as the project rolls forward, as well as to cover any cost overruns that wouldn't be covered. One of the concerns, and I was talking with the consultant today, is just making sure that when we do phase 2 for the collection systems, that we can still come within budget, because the cost overruns that we've been experiencing on phase 1, of course, there's plenty of room in the budget on phase 1, but as we go through phase 2, making sure that those are manageable, or any cost overruns we can cover through our general fund, or an interfund loan to ourselves for an interim period, or we could also approach, I would probably be more successful in approaching USDA for more loan funds than I would EDA for more grant funds for that project. So again, services is the bulk of the costs, with salaries, and then the transfers out being the other drivers. And then the detail is also, so in here, I have the ability to show you the detail or just keep it high level. I've offered to show the detail for all of the tables, so you can see sort of where the money's going, and how it's coming in as well. But this equates to, the line item detail that you would get in the budget.
190 pages.
What?
190
Oh, yeah.
pages.
Yep.
How
So-
far back did this table go? I mean, I know we can only see 2021 actual, but
So I can make this table go back all the way to 2013. It just doesn't print well.
Mm.
I get an error flag if I do more than 6 columns. And so I can take out a couple of these columns and add a couple more years. But
out of curiosity for my own.
are there any other funds that anyone wants to see or have questions on? Anything on the street fund?
No, that affordable housing, $5,000. Get out of my head.
I know, right? Right. Well, and the challenge, the way that they were pitching it, it's like you couldn't figure out what you would get back, but you had a short window to choose. And so it's like, well, sure, why not? In essence, it was free money because it's a credit from what the state is already collecting. It doesn't cost taxpayers any additional. But yeah, it's not much.
Yeah.
So
It's got a good title though,
it did.
catchy title.
Right? Yeah, yep. So again, and this is 20, these are budgeted numbers still in this chart. As the year closes out, I'll update the 2022 to actual costs. But
So are sidewalk repairs in street funds? Is that
yes.
the same?
And so, so this year we did some sidewalk grinding. Next year, again, this is just your revenues, your taxes, your interfund transfer, and then other licenses and permits, or sorry, intergovernmental revenues. Again, that sales tax. And so I have this kind of by function. So street maintenance, admin and overhead, and then planning. And so the engineering would be lumped into that planning fund. And so here we have it by, snow removal, lights, signs and paths, landscaping, stormwater, and then just general roadway. And then your admin and overhead.
I don't see anything specific for landscaping.
It's under, oh yeah, no, it's just kind of general. I have to see what those supplies were for. I didn't do the detail on this one. I think.
Waste,
It might be on the type.
like we spent $20,000 on wastewater electricity. Roughly.
Okay.
Maybe if we had solar panels, we would spend less.
Don't we know, guy?
Word on the street.
Heard of somebody.
And that's not insignificant amount.
Right.
How much was it?
Not year over year, it's not.
20.
Especially.
20,000 a year?
At least that's what this says. I don't know where that number comes from, but I assume
That's
that's
before the upgrade.
Huh?
That's before the upgrade.
true. There will be more blowers.
Hopefully more efficient. Was there a big, this, Leanna, I think it's before you. But we switched over to LEDs for streetlights.
It was during me, yeah.
It was doing, is that a big difference?
Oh, great question.
I think we did notice the savings. I think we also noticed more of a savings in the maintenance.
Sure.
So we don't have to replace as many lights and stuff right now. So
But the electric consumption noticeably went down. But
um,
you don't seem to be like, yeah, it was great.
If we pull back previous years.
right, we could
would
probably see
it.
it. Yeah. Actually, let's see. I mean, it would be,
That goes back to 13 on one.
yeah. Be in this blue bucket. But it's hard to tell.
Yeah,
Yeah. Who knows?
People
Right,
expanded.
right. Because I think in 2018 was when they did it, 2018 or 2019, I forget when. When they did the project.
Eric was still here for that.
Mhm.
That helps with your timeline estimation.
I think we did it in 1 year and we're paid in another. It was over. It crossed years for one part of that project. I forget which, if it was the revenue or the expense. I think it was the expense happened in 18 and the revenue came in 19.
Where's, is our building under, is this building under Public Works or is it under something different?
This building's under the general fund. Mhm. Yeah. So going forward, I'll build out the pages for the departments. So Public Works right now is kind of general, $17.7 million right now for budgeted for 2023. And again,
Typically it's more like 4. Huh?
yes, it's the wastewater treatment plant upgrades. Driving. All of that. Yeah. And then, you have some, so the general fund is your parks. And then some minor projects at Columbia Avenue. Then equipment services, street and water sewer.
One thing I noticed about parks is there was like a park rental
Yes.
fee, and it looked like previously we'd been charging like $3,500. And then we dropped it to like $2,500. I know it's small potatoes, but we spend more than that on other park stuff, so it might make sense to.
So the park rental fee is $2,500 for BRG to rent Walnut Park. And that was established in 2016. Yeah.
Yeah,
2017.
wow.
I would think.
So we
that might be-
haven't, I don't know that we've relooked at that since then,
Missing all the
especially
things,
since COVID.
all things we rent, right? Like, gosh, I'll go up a little bit
Mhm.
since everything else is.
Mhm. And so then, the fire department and then community development are kind of the other ones that I have established right now. But so here's fire department. In 2019 is when we bought the command vehicle. So that's what the spike is for that one. And kind of fire district, we share costs with fire district 2, and so that's kind of what we have it split out between. And yeah, so the capital outlay right there is the vehicle. And capital improvements, this is just kind of what we're, capital projects that we talked about for this year so far. So you have the water sewer fund for $262,000, the general fund combined is 60,000 for 2 projects, and then the equipment service vehicle purchase. And so, there we go. And then again, I'm working on the debt. There's nothing in there right now. But there is no government-wide debt. It's all revenue debt. So government-wide would be any general obligation bonds, if we issued any of those, you know. Try to make this as painless as possible with charts and graphs versus just staring at numbers. But
I like the way it looks.
mhm. One cool thing with this budget overview, let's see, or sorry, the introduction, it has a bunch of, let's see, everything that's on here is a requirement to get, for the, is it the Government Finance Officers Association Distinguished Budget Award. So you need to have all of these things in there to tell the public how you're spending money and what you do with it and what your plan is.
There's
So
a whole
that's what-
document about that. I read, this wasn't in there yet. So I read that whole document about all the requirements that we have to have and the dates, the things that have turned in and all that.
And this goes even beyond that. And like, this is what a good budget is.
I'm shocked that we've lost population in the past year.
So, yeah, it went from 6, I mean, look at this chart. So we were up at, no, we were at 15. Yeah. So this is from the ACS American Community Survey. And it's slightly different than the figure that we get from the Washington State Office of Financial Management. So OFM is what gives us our revenues. And so we go off of theirs. And so that's where it says 1550. And so it does differ from the ACS number slightly. Yeah, I mean, apparently we're up all the way up at 1669 in 2010.
What happened in 2010?
The census.
Oh, so it's more of a,
Adjustment.
Yeah,
A
2010 is more of an
realistic
adjustment over
Okay.
like these years.
okay,
Yeah,
That was just a general, we figured they're gonna increase this much, so.
right, yeah. OFM, they take what we give them for buildings. So every April, we have to provide them with any demolished houses and then any new builds and any new ADUs, apartment complexes, all of that. And so they take those numbers and that's what they use to calculate out the new population. They don't take any questions as far as whether the person building that home is going to be living there full time. And so that's also part of, I think, what constituted some of the decrease for 2020. So daytime population, though, I do not know where they get any of this information, but so we jump apparently about 500 people during the day, which
So you would think that would be like the lodge. And
on the county
the
buildings
county and the buildings down, the places down the Portman, when I was down there, only about a third of people that worked there lived in Stevenson,
and we have 2
maybe
schools.
less.
Yeah.
Right,
So yeah,
So
This
then
would
that
also
makes-
be tourists.
yeah.
right.
Yep. And then population by age group. So again, kind of what we've known is we have a larger an older age group. And I think was it Downtown Association did a study as well.
I was looking for that chart today. I couldn't find
Right,
it.
yeah.
I would look at that based on the census and all that kind of stuff, checking against
Mhm.
they show.
And so we have, numbers that are lower than the state average. And
What was the higher, we'll go up one.
singles,
I was like.
right? So we
that's the
have,
one thing that's higher. Married people down.
right, less
family
family households,
down.
married couples, higher percentage of singles, and then, lower percentage of seniors living alone.
Interesting, that's way.
Right.
Pretty wild.
Economic analysis, 0.8% of our households have income above 200,000, 92% lower than state average. Our median income is 23% lower than state average. And the number of people that have an income below 25,000 is 69% higher than state average. No, those are not winning numbers.
Our state average is dictated by Seattle though.
Sure,
I-5 corridor.
yeah, absolutely.
But you think Spokane might even some of it out, but
Maybe that's okay.
no, it's just
They don't
Right.
take, they don't.
further
take-
away from the I-5 corridor.
Right.
So do they
No.
take, they take same type of city, or is it just across the board? And then they average out the state average and.
They
that's it?
take all of the data
Every human.
to get the state average.
You know, you can make numbers say anything. you
Right.
want.
I was gonna say,
Yeah.
it would be interesting to see other cities that are
Oh,
this far away, you know what I mean?
If we had
Take the
some
Trico
comps.
League.
Like
This
cities,
rural,
take
yeah.
like cities,
Yeah.
and then take a look at them and see.
And are
what-
they also 24,
Mhm.
69%?
Yeah, as close as we
Right.
live to the airport, we have a lot of pilots stuff who live here, who have decent salaries.
Yeah.
A lot is interesting.
Okay, I personally know 3.
You know,
Right.
3
Three.
pilots? Commercial pilots?
Yeah.
Wow. Oh.
So
You
you,
don't hang out at the airport, do you?
so you compare that data with then our median home value. I don't know if there's state average information on this one, but median home value is about $340,000, and that's 2020.
It's gotta be higher.
There's,
Higher now.
there's a little bit of a lag, but yeah.
Interesting how that can-
And so then more people rent than own against the state average. And then the home value distribution, that's how you get your average. And there you go.
Well,
I can add commentary
well
if I
put
want.
together.
Mhm.
Yeah, so this, actually, they just pull from all the reports and everything, so it's great, to have that as, a way to kind of look at, where we're at,
We have them together, actually.
right, yeah.
She builds all that for us.
So, yeah.
Coded it herself.
And just kind of an overview of the budget timeline, we started really, you didn't know it, but we did, back in May with that strategic plan. And then we had our final retreat in July, and then this is what the budget calendar said. We had our first public hearing in October, this special meeting. We have our second public hearing in November. It could also be a final public hearing, but we can have as many public hearings as we want. We're just required to have a minimum of 2. And then December 15th is the possible budget adoption, but the deadline is the 31st. So again, opportunities for additional public input or changes if need be. So,
Cool.
there was something I wanted to show. So the strategic plan, just going off of that. So again, we have 3 main strategies. So that organizational health and sustainability, with kind of the key buckets of governance, financial health, and internal processes. Our second one is infrastructure, with equipment and assets, multimodal transportation, utilities, maintenance of the current utilities, as well as growth of utilities, parks and outdoor space, and then developments with utility partners. So those are gas, electric, broadband, and phone, and then intentional development. So partnerships with the city and county, the housing, which is what we were talking about as well, planning and zoning, and then strategic land use planning and development. So let's see if this. There we go. This is my first time using the attachment, so now I know what this looks like. I'll see if I can bring it in there differently. Here's just a different way to have it look.
That's the papers we have.
Exactly, all the sticky notes and the dots and all the things.
I recognize it.
In a spreadsheet. And then at the next council meeting, I'll report sort of on the progress of all. So, here we go. Mhm.
I do appreciate that. I feel like we've been trying to bring this up and stick to the things that we all thought were important
Mhm.
when we've come to decisions as a group. I think it's been a key that we all talk about doing, and we've done a pretty good job of holding to that, so.
I see fire hall up there. A few years back, that was the hot topic. Now it seems to have really fallen to the back burner. Where is that?
It's down, but if you look
Really,
out that
it's the
window.
same thing that happened to broadband. There's been everything that's been going on here in this building is sewer plant
Right.
Money
That's
and-
its bandwidth.
and
that's-
manpower, human hours that go into it. So, yeah, hopefully there'll be a few things that'll shake loose once we get through this. Great.
So are there any questions, anything else you want to see more information on, more detail? I kind of put 60% for the other revenue and more information on that. Anything else?
Like it.
Can
I
you
like that.
separate
Print out.
that other revenue into its own pie chart and have?
Yeah, that's what I kind of put a note on, kind of like what I did for the expenses. Yeah. So. No, it's gonna be right next week.
It's driving me crazy.
Yeah, it's gonna be right on Monday.
Monday.
Monday, you can do it again.
My wife purposely sets the clock 10 minutes fast in the bathroom. So she looks up and goes, "Oh, I gotta get a move on." I'm like,
Hate
come on.
Good grief.
So
That's awesome.
because she was out of town for so long, I changed the clock to the normal time and I put a sticky on it. So when she came home today,
She knows.
this is the correct time. Do not look at that and go, "Oh, I got 10 more minutes." No, you don't.
So, there we go. Any other questions or anything? Stop sharing.
When did you say this was going to be up for all the world to see? In that format?
Hopefully by the end of the week, I wanted to, I mean, I could make it public today. It's just messy. There's some nuances. Like there's, like I don't have anything for financial policies, so it'll be blank. Which
Yeah,
it
you
is in the
better to-
printed
you better
version,
to-
so,
Put in a clean copy.
right.
I've always liked these workshops, especially the pie charts, especially for new council members. It's such a eye-opening thing to realize how much comes in, what you have to deal with going out.
Yeah.
So it's an eye-opening thing. So I love these workshops every year. I have it, and this makes it a lot easier. But yeah, those other great big other pieces of pie might cause more questions than you were hoping for.
If someone looks at it and has a question, then they understand it. They can ask a question. That's a good thing, because when you give them, you know,
Questions are welcome.
the gobbledygook. Yeah, yes, questions are definitely welcome. So, just overview of, and these are all projects that were funded for last year. The Tourism Advisory Committee will meet tomorrow morning.
At 8 o'clock.
Yep, pretty early.
Came up with that time.
Get it out of the way, I'm fine.
Killing me.
Make sure there's coffee. So, but yeah. So we do have a couple of other events, and we'll see what happens. So, and capital projects as well. So when
The
those,
Gorge Olympics Windsurfing Cup, is that new?
yeah, it was new this year. And it was successful, and so they're gonna do it again next year as well. And same with the Downwind Championships was successful this year, and it's gonna happen next year. The Downwind Championships was moved from Hood River. And I think the Olympic Windsurfing Cup, was that from Cascade Locks, or was it just a new one this year?
How did we not have signage up on that? Those are mine.
The only reason I knew about some of that stuff is because working down.
Yeah, you
Been there, I heard about it.
Yeah.
For parking and planning, and they ran power out of that building or whatever.
Mhm.
But they seem to be successful, even though I didn't know anybody here who knew about them. And our employees didn't know about them until we told them. So,
Mhm.
it would be nice if somebody, I don't know that it's us that needs to necessarily promote all this stuff, but the people who do it, the only people who know about it are very like niche, like,
Well, it's the participants, right?
yeah, it's the participants and their families who
As
shows up.
opposed to a potential audience.
Right, which is surprising. I don't understand why you wouldn't.
So one of the things that we're working on and we've been discussing is how to do event signage. And so next year, the Chamber of Commerce is going to be working with all of the event holders and managing sort of that calendar for the signage. But we also have a more permanent plan to improve signage throughout town, whether that's as you come into town or whether that's banners throughout town, however that goes, for the events, right? Yeah, well, whether it's like the kiosks that come out for like
Yeah.
Blues and Brews, yeah.
Yeah.
So, those are some of the things that we'll be talking about and, trying to decide on a way forward, over the next year.
Yeah.
Some sort of standardization so that it looks clean.
And you know where it's gonna, like, where to look for things that are coming up, because like, honestly, some of the stuff that's even down at the, the fairgrounds. All of a sudden, there's a bunch of RVs there parked, and I'm like, well, there's something going on. I don't know what it is, but a bunch of people are here, and, it would be nice if,
Maybe I want to go.
it
Right.
would be something cool that I could maybe want to go see, maybe I don't, but,
The
You know.
tattoo convention was the one that did, because every time I turn around, there was another little postcard for that one. They seem to have their act together on getting people down there. But yeah, you're right. There's so many other events where.
right, you just see,
Well,
well,
there is.
I'll take my kid down to the park, and all of a sudden, there's a bunch of people, I'm like, I guess we're doing something, cool.
Yeah, hopefully
So-
this isn't organized.
Right, not just spontaneous
Yeah, I just,
flash
I
mob.
didn't know we were doing it. It just would be nice to, I don't know how much they pull from local or not, but it'd still be cool to have an idea.
We try to encourage them to coordinate with the Chamber of Commerce. So hopefully the chamber can host a calendar of all those events, but again, I don't know. Like you said, if it's an event that just is longstanding for people that go to the event and participate in it, sometimes they don't
Lead out. They don't need an
need,
audience.
right, they don't need more people, so they typically don't spend a lot of money on advertising.
But SDA had talked about, they were gonna grab a right of way permit and take over like the management of the signage, event signage.
Mhm. Yep.
Okay.
Should be slick.
Digital sign, maybe?
We talked about that.
Contentious.
They are,
It's up and down.
but it's so easy that you can just program it and you get the new sign. right there.
Gotta find a picture of one that's not ugly though.
Right.
Paul, that
Right,
was where
right.
we got.
I know.
Right.
Like the one at the high school, just red dots.
Mm.
Okay, anything else? No? Okay. Want to adjourn the meeting?
Meeting adjourned at 7:00.